Okay, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well today. As per usual, if you're seeing me okay and you're hearing this, can you do me a favor and just type a one in the comment box? It'll just let me know that the stream's okay. All right. So today we're going to talk about the next installment of the digital marketing playbook, which is search everywhere optimization. So, what is it? So, I'm assuming that if you're watching this, you've maybe heard of the term SEO, or you're familiar with what SEO is in general. So, it's been around for a few years now, and it's just simply the process of optimizing your website essentially so that you appear high in Google search rankings. And traditionally that has been the path to a lot of online traffic to your website, which means bookings, which means more patient revenue and so on. So back in the day, it was Google's first page of search results. You really wanted to be on there as high as possible. The 10 blue links, that was the road to success. And that still is important. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think that it is probably still the single biggest source of traffic to any website for any business is traditional Google search. However, that whole paradigm has changed a lot, particularly in the last few years with the emergence of AI and so on. So this is what some people are even calling SEO 2.0. So that's what I wanted to talk about today. So as per usual, I'm going to start with some bold assumptions here that you're watching this because you are the owner or manager or planning to become the owner or manager of an optometry practice, an audiology practice, or an ophthalmology practice. And you're also interested in growing that practice. And if any of the ideas that I talk about today resonate with you, you'd like to know more, you'd like to know how these can be applied to your own practice, then please reach out to me. We can arrange a free one-on-one Zoom call through. Well, you can reach me through either my website, which is opticsdigital.net for my agency, or you can simply contact me directly through LinkedIn. So this is what we're going to talk about today, what you will learn. So we're going to discuss how has patient search evolved. We're going to talk about what successful practices are doing now. We'll discuss how you can audit your own practice's visibility and what action steps you should prioritize. So before we jump into that, just a little bit more about who am I. So my name is Paul Salloway. I'm the owner of Optics Digital Marketing. I started in digital marketing and web consulting way back 2008. And so was it almost 4 years now, 3.5 years ago, I started Optics Digital Marketing with the intention of specifically helping independent healthcare practices in Australia, starting with optometrists, but we now work with ophthalmologists and audiologists as well, who need structured marketing systems to help their practices grow. So we have growth plans for every stage of your business, whether you've just launched a new practice, whether you're growing, or whether you already have good visibility in the marketplace, but just want to improve other aspects of your whole marketing strategy. So how has patient search evolved? Well, people are searching in more places than they used to. So, for example, if somebody has a question, how does LASIK eye surgery work? They might turn to YouTube and look for a video that explains all of that. If someone's interested in finding best pediatric optometrist near me, they may turn to Google Maps, either on their desktop, or if they have the Maps app on their phone. Somebody might be interested in getting opinions, like is Widex a good hearing aid brand? And they may turn to a Facebook group and ask for opinions from other users, other hearing device users about that. So people's path to booking an appointment with you, their patient journey, a lot it involves various touch points now. It's not as simple as it used to be. So, and I think there's a generational aspect to this as well. So, particularly amongst Gen Zs and millennials, so people are talking about what they call social search. So, I know, talking to my niece, I asked her, like, if you're looking for a particular product or a particular service, how do you usually go about it? And I was quite surprised when she said her first port of call is Instagram. So if she's looking for something, first she'll do a search on Instagram. So that's quite insightful for me. Voice search. So voice search is always something that's held promise, but I think for a long time it's had some problems. Like if you're speaking to your phone, because most people, after all, prefer to speak to their phone rather than type into it. A lot of people are quite skilled with the two thumbs. Not me, I'm afraid. I'm old school with one finger hunt and peck. Put me in front of a keyboard and I can type as fast as I can think, but on phones it's something different. So anyway, a lot of people would rather do their search using voice. But I think for a long time there have been problems with like background noise, and the device couldn't really understand some people's accents, so it was problematic. But that has been getting better and better and better. App-centric search is another thing. So I already mentioned Google Maps. So that's a dedicated app that most people have on their phone. But there are other sort of like more specific healthcare related apps like Health Engine or Hot Doc that people might use if they're looking for a vendor, whether that be like a dentist or a physiotherapy or an audiologist or an optometrist. Okay, so that's another way that people are connecting with their preferred health provider. So camera first search, and this is an interesting one. So you've probably heard of something called Google Lens. If not, then open up the Google app on your phone and look in the top right corner. There'll be a little icon. It looks a bit like that QR code, focusing window. So anyway, that's Google Lens. So if you tap on that and then point that at something and search, it'll tell you more information about what that is. So just to give you an example, so yesterday I used Google Lens on my phone to I pointed at these sunglasses which I own. So I picked these up last year. They're a pair of Bollé Air Drifts, and so I pointed the Google Lens at that and searched, and sure enough, it told me that's what they are. And this is where it gets interesting. I said, okay, so where could I buy these frames in inner West Brisbane? And it gave me a short list of places, including a few local optometry practices. But the interesting thing was that the place where I actually got these was not in that list. So I thought, okay, let's get more specific. So I typed in the name of the suburb, okay, the name of the suburb where my optometrist is located. I said, can I buy these frames in insert suburb name? And interestingly, it said no. It gave me, it even listed the names of the optometrists in that suburb, including my optometrist. But it said, excuse me, but it said no, these are not available at these places, which is obviously incorrect. So I thought, why? And looking at the practices that it did shortlist, it's easy to see when I go to those websites that they actually do have images of Bollé glasses on their website, whereas my optometrist doesn't have photos of Bollé. So I think that this is a whole aspect of changing search behavior that people need to be aware of. And I could probably do a whole video on optimizing for camera first search, and like how you can optimize images on your website so that you do actually get recommended by something like Google Lens. So I mean, you can imagine the scenario, right? So I'm at a barbecue or a party or something, and somebody says, "Oh, I like your glasses. Where did you get them? Or what are they?" A lot of people will just want to point their phone, take a photo, and then find out where, what their options are for buying that. So, so I think that if you're not being recommended by Google Lens, then you're potentially missing out on a quite a good sale. And I've talked about in the past about the lifetime value of patients. So it's not just the sale of that one pair of frames, but it's you're missing out on the potential for repeat business. That patient coming back for regular eye exams, and recommending your practice to friends and family and all the rest of it. So that's just another aspect of how search is changing. And I think the big one is AI conversational search. So rather than just typing a search phrase or keyword phrase into Google, like pediatric optometrist near me, so people would search a tool like ChatGPT or even Google AI mode itself. I'm looking for a pediatric optometrist in inner West Brisbane who's open on Saturday mornings and who bulk bills for myopia exams, right? Or myopia management. And so, that's what we call a long tail search. There's a lot of inputs into that query, and it's probably a conversational thing as well, where the AI platform is going to come back with some answers, and then it might ask you to provide some further details. Are you looking for somewhere that has on-site parking, right? So AI conversational search is of course, I think the direction of travel when it comes to searching for products and services. So what are successful practices doing now? Well, the winners aren't necessarily producing more content, but they're making sure that their expertise appears in more places simply through repurposing and optimization strategies. So to give you some examples, so it might include creating a long form video and then chopping that video into shorter reels. Short form video is a really big thing, and posting that across platforms. So, for example, you might record a video on myopia management, and in that one video talk about different things like Hoya lenses, like MySight contact lenses, atropine drops, ortho-K, and each of those little segments of the longer video could be repurposed into a reel that you share on Facebook or Instagram, and other places as well. So there are a lot of tools. So that sounds like a bit of work, but there are a lot of tools that sort of automate that process. So Opus Clip is probably one that you should look at. Leveraging in-store photo opportunities. So this is something that I talk to my clients about again and again. I can't really emphasize this enough. It's low-hanging fruit. It's something that a person in your organization should be delegated as being the responsible, in-store photo person. Get them to take more photos. Get them to take photos of the products that you stock, your equipment, your staff, what the inside of your practice looks like, how it looks from the street, all of these things. So all of these photos can be uploaded to Google Business Profile. It indicates, it's a signal to Google that your business is active and trustworthy. They're more likely to recommend you. You should be uploading these to social networks. I can tell you for a fact that people love these kind of behind the scenes photos, especially, right? So, somebody in your practice is celebrating a birthday, take a photo. People will eat that stuff up. Creating knowledge-based content. So it's really important to have a content marketing strategy. I've talked about that in a previous video. Most businesses that I consult with haven't been creating enough content in the past to really indicate their expertise in a particular area. But when you do create that content, let's say blog articles, then you should be sharing them. It's not simply enough just to write something and then post it on your website and forget about it. So you need to be sharing that through newsletters. I talked about that last week. Go and check out that video. And social posts. I don't understand why people don't do this more often. But if you're posting on LinkedIn or LinkedIn or Facebook or some other social network, then you should be posting a link back to your blog article. Get some more eyeballs on that piece of content that you've gone to the trouble of creating. Local news channels. So this is something that almost nobody's doing, and again, I don't really understand why. So local news is always, local magazines, they're always looking for content to put in their publications. So if you have a newsworthy story that you can offer to a local publication, you could get some free PR, right? So it could be something, for example, like one of our clients is one of very few optometrists who is getting early access to some new types of myopia control lenses, right? And I think that's a newsworthy story that you could write a synopsis of that and send it to like your local community magazine. Now, in a lot of cases, a lot of these local magazines, they actually may want you to pay to place that story, okay? And like in my experience, it's not a huge amount of money. It might be like a couple of $100 maybe to get a half-page news article posted about your practice and something that you're doing in your business. I think that's well worth it, because you're getting brand mentions, and this is a key thing. So in the past, with traditional SEO, it was all about getting the link. It was all about getting links to your website. With the new search paradigms that are emerging, simply getting a mention of your brand is worth almost as much. So if your community magazine has an online version, which they all do, they mention your brand, and that gets picked up by AI platforms like ChatGPT and so on. That's of benefit to your online visibility. Which leads me to the final point here, which is successful practices are optimizing their website for visibility across both traditional search, which means Google primarily, but also Bing, Google and Bing. Those are the traditional search engines. But they're also optimizing their website for AI search. This means ChatGPT, Perplexity, and all the others, Claude, Gemini, and so on. And again, that's a whole video in itself on how to do that. But so there are technical aspects to it. Simply having the content on your site in the first place is also a necessary step. So this is what practices are doing to get more visibility for these new forms of search behavior. So how can you audit your own practice? Well, so you should find out, can a new patient actually find you if they were to search in various places? So I'm just wondering how many of you have actually searched for your practice name or searched for a key service that you offer. Have you searched? Have you looked in Google, like a simple Google search? Have you checked Google Maps? Have you typed your name of your practice into, or have you typed something like audiologist in insert suburb name? Okay, where do you appear in the Google Maps rankings? Same with YouTube, same with Facebook, Instagram, Chat GPT, all of these platforms, even forum sites like Reddit, for example. Okay, you'd be surprised how many people might mention your service or your practice on Reddit, particularly if you're doing something that's a little bit niche in your city. So keep in mind also that when you're doing a search, when you're using something like the Google search box, there's a lot of elements that come into the results that you get back. One of them being proximity. So if you're doing a search, let's say from the western suburbs of Sydney, you're going to get a whole different set of results than if you're searching from Bondi Beach, right? And also it'll take into account your own browser history, how often you visited particular sites in the past. So it's a good first thing to do, but it's not necessarily definitive. There are tools that will give you a better answer, like Google Maps, for example. We use a tool called Bright Local, where you can search for a query like, well, you could put in the name of your practice and do a search for, like, optometrist near me, and it'll give us a map grid, and it'll tell us, like where you're ranking within Google Maps. You might be in position 1 or 2 on Google Maps here, but on position 8 or 9 down here. So that's probably a more sophisticated way of searching, but that doesn't mean that you can at least check yourself and just see what sort of results you're getting. Maybe you try a different browser, maybe you try a different device, things like that. Try from different locations. So ask the question, do I appear? Does my practice appear? How often do my competitors appear? Is my information accurate? Okay, I've seen this where we did a search for one of the clients we started working with, and like some of the contact information that Google was bringing back was just totally wrong. And so we had to look into why that was the case, and it came back to maybe the information on their Google business listing was out of date. So that sort of thing. So check the accuracy. That's really important. See if there's any educational content attached to your practice brand name. So, if you're creating blog articles, if you're creating YouTube videos, then you should, especially if it's comprehensive, well done, well produced, well written, then you should expect to see this pop up when you're searching using specific keyword terms. Okay. So what action steps should you prioritize from here? Well, so when I say search everywhere optimization, that obviously sounds like a lot of work. So, and it could be, but so I think that the idea here is that you should perhaps prioritize certain things. And I'm going to give you 4 places that you can start. So the first is with your own Google business profile. Okay, you should have a Google business profile. If you don't have one, that's the first thing that you should do today. But check your reviews. Okay, how many reviews have you got? How could you get more reviews? Go back and look previous videos. I've talked about that. Are you responding to the reviews? Photos. Okay, this video I mentioned that most practices are not using photos to the fullest extent. Okay, you should be adding photos regularly to your Google business profile. Services and products. So there are places on your Google business profile where you can choose categories. Okay, for what type of business you have. So that might be, the primary category might be optometrist, but secondary category, eye care clinic, contact lens supplier, glasses repair, that sort of thing. So make sure that you tick off anything that's relevant. Okay, relevant is the key word here. But products. So most businesses I see don't even have any products on their Google business profile. But if you're let's say you're an audiologist and you're selling a range of different brands of hearing devices. It could be, Widex or Phonics or something else. So why not put why not put the images of those products and some sort of description of the product on your Google business profile as well? You will get visibility and potentially get new patients who are using something like Google Lens to search. Update posts. This is another thing that's really easy to do. So every week, post is just a simple, succinct explanation of maybe some service that you're offering. So I've mentioned in the past that Google update posts are not social media, right? Don't treat them as social media. Treat them as free advertising. If somebody's looking at your Google business profile, then they are quite far down the patient journey already. So they're in a mode where they are receptive to hearing more about the specifics of what you could offer them. So Google update posts, it's an easy, low-hanging fruit opportunity. And I've talked about accurate business details. So make sure that your business hours are correct. Make sure that the contact details are correct. Phone numbers, websites, all that type of thing. If you've got on-site parking, make sure all these things are checked off. So that's priority number one. So make sure your Google business profile is up to date. Number two is create and distribute searchable video content across YouTube and your socials. So you're probably you probably have a list of frequently asked questions. What are the things that patients are always asking you? Why not create videos that answer these things? So if you're an optometrist, you might get the question, what causes dry eye? What causes dry eye disease? Make a video about that. If you're an audiologist, what kinds of hearing aids are available? Like what's the difference between an ITC and a CIC hearing device? What is a Bicross hearing device? All these types of questions. Make videos about them. So it helps to position you and your practice as the authority, as the expert. Is laser eye surgery effective? So, this is the question that people might have when they're sort of at that top of the funnel. They're thinking about LASIK, but they're really unsure about it all. So by getting your practice name on their radar at that point, you increase the chances that you're going to be one of the first practices that they contact to get that initial consultation. So yes, video, very powerful. Okay, long form, repurpose it into short form video. Priority number 3 is build authority beyond your website. So I talked about local media. Sponsorships is another thing that you can be doing, sponsoring local organizations and getting exposure to, like, with your local football club, your local cricket club, your local hockey club, all that sort of thing. These places, they have their own websites. They'll give brand mentions for you. Podcasts. This is again something that most people probably don't recognize, but podcasts are a great opportunity for you to at least create a bit of shareable content. So give you an example, like I have a podcast, it's the Dry Eye Treatment Podcast, and I interview healthcare professionals, optometrists and ophthalmologists about what they're doing in the dry eye treatment space. And so those podcasts, they go on Apple Podcasts, they go on Spotify, various places, but it also gives you something that you can embed on your own website or share through your own social media. It just gains more brand awareness for what you're doing and positions you as the expert in whatever it is that you want to be known for. Online communities, I mentioned before, Facebook groups. So I'm in Facebook groups for things like scleral lenses. People are always asking, Where's the best place to go to get my scleral lenses looked at in Melbourne, for example, or questions like that. So if you're not part of these online communities, if you're not helping people to answer their questions, then you're missing an opportunity. And not just Facebook groups, but things like Quora. Quora is an online forum. Reddit, you've probably heard of Reddit. This is another thing. AI platforms in particular often reference things that are on Reddit, Google as well. So Reddit is a really quite powerful way that you can get more visibility for your brand online. And I think with all of these forums, keep in mind that you really don't want to be overly promotional. Okay, so just think of it as an opportunity to provide meaningful educational information. If you are if it does come across that you're spamming links to your own business, then you may be removed from those communities. So just keep that in mind. Industry publications, so something like if you're in eye care, so My Vision magazine, that's a popular publication. Eye Smart magazine, there are others, Insight and so on. If you can get yourself mentioned in any of these, it's also good for your overall online visibility and the opportunity to appear in search results. And the fourth priority, I think, is create AI friendly content. So this comes back to having some sort of a knowledge base on your website where you're answering specific patient questions. Every article should be broken down into easily digestible chunks, have maybe like a key takeaway section at the top of the page, or a too long didn't read summary. You should be demonstrating your what they call EAT, E-E-A-T, demonstrate experience, expertise, authority, and trustworthiness in your author bio. So at the bottom of every piece of content, there should be some sort of a bio of who you are, who the author was. Linking back to your LinkedIn profile is also a great idea. So it's just something that demonstrates that the person who's writing about this topic, whether it be LASIK or Smile Pro surgery or something like that, that they are actually qualified to talk about these things. So this is really quite an important point. It also include any hyperlinks, URL links back to any academic studies that support what it is that you're saying. And also, I think it's also really good to include some in-house insights. What I mean by that is when you're writing an article, don't hesitate to say something like, in our experience, we found a lot of patients come to us with these types of problems. Okay, it just demonstrates that you have that it's not theoretical, but you have practical experience in whatever it is that you're dealing with. And I think the last part about getting cited in AI is to have a network of citations across the web. So that means backlinks. Backlinks are still it's an important thing to have. They've always been important for SEO. They're still important for AI visibility. Backlinks means, like, obviously another website has a hyperlink that points to a page or on your website or your homepage. And directory listing. So I've mentioned this in a previous video again, but I've got a list of like 50 local business directories where you can get your practice registered for free. And all of these listings means that Google and ChatGPT and all of these platforms, they see your business as more trustworthy, and therefore they're more likely to recommend you. So I hope this presentation has been helpful. If you're watching and you have a question, now's the time. Pop it in the chat box. So I just want to leave you with a final thought, which is that the goal isn't just ranking on, or isn't just ranking #1 on Google anymore. There's a bigger picture involved now, and that goal is to become visible wherever patients search, compare, research, or seek opinions. Okay, so this is what we mean by search everywhere optimization, SEO 2.0. Right. So as I said, if you'd like to have a quick chat about how any of these ideas can apply to your practice, or if you'd just like me to have a look at your website and give you some feedback through an email, I can do that as well. So to get in touch with me, you can reach out either through my agency's website, which is opticsdigital.net. You can find me on LinkedIn, or you can send me an email, paul@opticsdigital.net. All right, so I hope that's been helpful. So have a great day, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.